Manipur has erupted again. Since the 1st of September, there have been 11 reported deaths, including that of a former soldier. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our special focus on the northeastern state of Manipur continues, where there have been massive protests by students on the streets of Imphal today. Students have led protests right up to the gates of the Raj Bhavan as well as the Chief Minister's residence. For more than a year now, Manipur has been in this state of turmoil. And while there are periods of what may be called lull but not normalcy, in the last few days we have seen an uptick in the violence and the tensions again. Deaths reported include those of women, but also that of a former soldier, a Havaldar who served with the Assam Regiment. We have, in fact, spoken to his family and his distraught and devastated wife. There is tragedy in every home today in Manipur. There is anxiety in every home today. And there is a divide, a line that separates the Kukis from the Meitei community. This, as a debate rages on over what the Manipur police have called drone attacks. What is the scale of these attacks? What is the truth about them? There's a big raging debate ongoing in Manipur where internet services have once again been hit amid escalating tensions. Demands from one community for a separate administration, from another community for status quo, by others for president's rule. What is the solution? Is there any solution in sight? What should be the next steps in this hyper polarized environment? Even our security institutions have been swept up in these tensions. You can see members of one community confronting the police and members of another community taking on the army. And most dangerous of all, weapons, as we discovered on our ground reports, in the hands of civilians of both communities, Kukis and Meiteis, estimated to be in the thousands. An inflammable situation if there ever was one. Joining me on the program today is our newsmaker, a very special guest, somebody who I believe has had a hands-on, on-ground sense of the worst year of Manipur violence. He was Director General of Assam Rifles till the 31st of July this year, which means he's really seen the worst, the peak, as it were, of the tensions in Manipur over the last year. General PC Nair is with us. General Nair, thank you for your time. Some comments made by you are already making headlines, but I'll get to those a little bit later. Let me start by asking you your overall perspective. You were on the ground till literally just over a month ago. For more than a year, we have seen Manipur rocked by strife. No semblance of normalcy. If you had to describe the situation in Manipur with, with a kind of invisible line partitioning the state, how would you describe it, General Nair?
Barkha, let me thank you in the very beginning for having me over. I would like to begin by telling you that while what we are seeing is quite unprecedented, perhaps most of the viewers don't know that there was something like this in the early 90s when there was a fight between the Nagas and Kukis. And I speak of that since I was there as a major, a company commander, running all over. And then the situation was, I should say, actually tougher because not just were these two communities fighting, but even the NACM faction wasn't in ceasefire then. So it was a tough ask then to, on the one hand, look after the insurgency factor. I mean, I just spoken of the Naga factions, but the Methi factions were very active as well. And then these two communities fighting. And why I'm uh, drawing your attention to that is that period was even worse. But then what didn't exist then was social media, live streaming of things. But most importantly, false videos, false narrations didn't exist. It was all word of the mouth. Even telephones weren't there. Having said that, coming to the present context, what I've said in my earlier interviews also, while there is simmerings of discontentment for quite some time, the trigger really was when the High Court gave that direction. Just the direction would possibly have been enough if a certain period wasn't given, that within the next 4 weeks, if I remember correct. But with due respect to the High Court, they, in their wisdom, would have thought perhaps this would help matters. On the contrary, it didn't help. And that's how it all started. I'm not going into the background. From there on, it was just a situation of escalation. The violence just escalated in the first 3 days, and we did our best. In fact, I've been bringing this out. Very often, we are questioned that you were caught off guard. Why aren't you able to control the violence? On the contrary, let me make it very clear that what we don't have any video proof to tell you of what our troops did. The Assam Rifles, and followed by the Indian Army, and then the other CFA forces when they came. At least the first 3 days, of which the first 2.5 were very, very crucial. That is when largely it was the Assam Rifles, 40, 45 columns of Assam Rifles got deployed. And we were on the phone almost all the time. I mean, every time there would be news of something happening here, something happening there. And it is because of our proactive action that we could save thousands of lives. And I've said this earlier, nobody thanks us for that. This figure of 236 plus these 11 that you just spoke of, nearing 250, would have been much more. It would have been 10 times. It would have been 2,500, maybe even 3,000. But the manner in which, professional manner in which Assam Rifles handled that situation, full credit to them. And I speak this way not to seek any credit for this, but it is something which has gone unnoticed.
Yeah.
So that is when it all began.
Yes, I think it's very important what you're saying that, as you said, nobody thanks you for, the lives that are lost are counted, but the lives that are saved are not counted, are not acknowledged. And I do take that point. Uh, but the Assam Rifles went through some very tense moments when you had women. I saw this personally. Women would come and stand in front of soldiers, and soldiers would suddenly be flummoxed as to how to deal with this. And this would happen often. Women of particularly the Mira Paibis would come and they would stand in front of soldiers with the Assam Rifles. That must have been a real challenge. I want to just ask you about that because it continues up until now. The women of both communities are at the front line, and with the Assam Rifles, there has been a confrontation with the Mira Paibis on the streets of sensitive areas, and you can see some of those images there. General.
Uh, I must again bring it to the notice of your viewers that the women of not just these two communities, but all the communities in Manipur are very strong. They hold a great degree of sway over the normal public. And I've seen this in my younger days also. While we are seeing it now live happening, but this is something that has always happened. In some way, when it all started, the Mira pipe is, since you asked that question, you're aware it was against the drug campaign that was there. Manipuris were
Yes.
the Manipur had an issue of drugs. In fact, in the 90s, late 80s, it was called as the drug capital and the HIV capital of the country. Of course, from then we've come a long way. But the Mira Pipes had a very great role to play in stopping the proliferation of drugs. My compliments to them for what they did then. But gradually, as they got more powerful, they also, in some way, became obstructionists whenever we undertook operations against some of the valley based insurgent groups. But that also applied when we did in some other areas of the other communities as well. The women would come and blockade us. But here you've seen how, in overwhelming numbers, they come and just kind of stop you. And well, it's not really something new for Assam Rifles because we've been seeing this. The Assam Rifle forces, the troops have been seeing this over decades. But notwithstanding, not in the numbers in which they were there on the streets this time during multiple situations.
Yeah. Let's come to the present situation, right? I think
Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch this off.
no problem.
Yeah,
Let's
please go ahead.
while you
Please go ahead.
yeah.
Please go ahead.
I was okay. I was saying let's come to the present situation. One of the dangerous things for me, who has spent most of my journalistic life reporting on the military and feels very strongly for it, has been to see what is happening with the security institutions. So when it comes to the Assam Rifles, and I'm going to say this very bluntly, you have the Meitei community accusing it of being pro-Kuki. When it comes to the Manipur police, you have the Kuki community accusing it of being pro-Meitei. You made a comment saying that the money about the Manipur police. So let's talk about that first. That today things are so divided in Manipur that it is not Manipur police. It's either Kuki police or Meitei police. They've issued a strong response to your comment today. Would you like to talk about what you meant when you said it's not Manipur police? It's either Kuki police or Meitei police.
Okay, I would like you to. Um, I would reason out by telling the context in which I spoke. Since this
Yeah.
entire conversation, this debate, uh, and why we are here is basically we were talking of these communities, these two ethnic identities who've been fighting. The context was them. I've been with dealing with Manipur for the past 3 decades. Like I told you, I've operated with them. I have great respect for them. As a major, I don't know in which all hills I've gone with them, and they've helped me multiple times. Then, uh, and this includes against the valley-based insurgent groups as well. So I have great respect for them right from my younger days to the time that I was a brigade commander again there. Again, a fabulous equation we had with them, and till this particular situation developed on the 3rd of May. Till then there was absolutely no problem. I know very well that when I say Manipur police, the constitution is mixed. It has a constitution which is very similar to their demographic configuration that exists in Manipur. So 53-54% Metis, maybe about 14-15% Kukis, and about 16 to 18% Nagas. I think by and large this would be the and of course there are rest also. There are Gorkhas and there are some others also. So that is what constitutes Manipur police. Of that I'm aware. But what in this present context, we are talking only of Metis and Cookies. They went to their respective areas, is what I said. That is what really meant. And you've been to Manipur. You tell me, did you see things any differently from this? Or let me put it this way: did you see, let's say, a policeman of one community in the other community's area, or vice versa? I leave that to you. I don't want to get into this kind of an argument.
Hmm.
Uh, I
What you're
don't
actually
I
what
don't
you're
want to
actually
create
trying to
situation.
say. No,
Yeah.
I understand. And what you're actually trying to say, sir, is that everything collapsed along ethnic lines, even party affiliations. If you take look at politics, today you have Kuki MLAs demanding certain Biren Singh's removal, and there 7 of them are from the BJP. So or not removal but investigation into the alleged audio tape. So I do agree with you that many things have collapsed along ethnicities. I assume that's what you were trying to say. But there have been a lot of fierce responses to what you said. Let's also talk about the Assam Rifles. The Assam Rifles, as you saw all of last year, and it couldn't have been easy. And as you said, nobody thanked you for what you did. The Assam Rifles was also accused by one community of favoring the other community, right? You were accused often by people of the Meitei community for being soft on the Kukis. And as I said, this is not particular to one community. The Kuki community has pointed similar fingers at the Manipur police. As a soldier, as a general leading soldiers, how have you dealt with this, and how do you deal with these allegations of ethnic bias?
I must say that you're not entirely correct in your question, and I have
In what way,
an
sir?
observation
In
in
what
this,
way?
and this
Yeah.
doesn't really, it's not in any way pointing a finger at you, but media by and large asks exactly what you're asking. On the flip side, I've again covered this in some of my interviews. You have the other community also, let's say the cookies, constantly telling us that you are just turning a blind eye to where the Arambai Tengos are going. You have the UNLF guys who are so-called in ceasefire. They're moving around with weapons, and you, the Central Forces, Assam Rifle, you're doing nothing about it. Shame on you. Such like videos are there. I'm sure you've seen those. There are
No, I
photographs of
appreciate.
that.
Sir, I appreciate. I should clarify my own position. I'm asking a question because this is what people in our audience stream will say. People I meet on the ground. My own
Oh,
view. My own view. Let me clarify my own view before you respond. My own view is that in a very hyper polarized situation, security forces, the army can't be made answerable for the failure of politics. What is happening in Manipur is a failure of politics. It is a failure of law and order, and the army is not a law and order machine. That is my own view. Even as journalists, sir. there are, let me, you'll empathize with this. The audience comments, you are a cookie channel, you are a Maithi channel, you are a cookie channel, you are a Maithi channel. So we are in that kind of polarized environment. So I empathize, but I must ask the question because people ask us this question. So I'm asking you this question. Sorry to interrupt you. Now, please go
No,
ahead.
that's perfectly all right. Which is why I'm clarifying. I'm just trying to clarify what is being played out in the media is only part of the story. It's only about one community opposing us. It is actually both communities have opposed it multiple times. Similarly,
Yeah,
one community supporting us. The other community also has been supporting us at times when we have been withdrawing from certain places. Please
sure.
read the media, go to these places. I can tell you of places from where, when we try to move a particular column, a post, a Assam Rifle column, the other community said, please don't go. And this is the community which is supposed to be against us. So let's not get into that. I mean, we are not concerned. Now I'm a former DG, but while I was there, uh, me, the co-commander, we were very clear on this, that no matter what comes in the media, no matter what people say about us, we'll continue to do what we are doing, what we are supposed to do. And it's in the overall interest of the country and the state. And that's exactly what we did. And it's a tough call. Let me tell you, it's a very tough task telling your troops that don't get too carried away, or don't worry about the media narratives, don't worry about those hoardings that are put up, don't worry about the shout outs that happen, just continue doing a job. And my full credit to all the officers and men of Assam Rifle, Indian Army, and of course the other paramilitary forces who were there
I I
to
agree
stood by.
totally, sir. I want to tell you that when at one point there were politicians who asked for the Assam Rifles to be moved out, and I condemned that, and I said that this sort of political narrative around our army is very very dangerous for our national security. So I empathize absolutely personally. You have to you know that I'm a signed up fan of the Indian military, so I do completely empathize with what you're saying. Let's come to the current situation.
No,
The
let me finish. I've not
Okay, sorry.
finished.
I'm so sorry. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
See, it doesn't really end. You know, the demand began with Assam Rifle to be moved out. Then it moved a scale up. Indian Army also to be moved out. Then it went further up. CRPF also to be moved out of certain places. Then remove all the central forces from Manipur. It has reached that level. Can you visualize, since you've been there in the state, can you visualize a situation where not a single central force person is there? Can the situation be handled? Let's be realistic. Let's stop kidding. So why
Mhm.
aren't people speaking about that? The situation, let the locals speak. Let them be honest enough to say what's happening. But and here, what I would also want to say, I'm sure that you've seen this during a visit. The common man, the person who's feeling the brunt of the complete situation, wants peace, wants normalcy, he wants schools, he wants health facilities, he wants normal life to start.
Yeah. If I may ask you, I why is what is standing between Manipur and normalcy? Now, one of the ongoing debates is whether new weapons are in use, and there's been a lot of focus on drones. Now, members of the Kuki community say that the drones are for surveillance and they're used by both communities and they were not weaponized. The Manipur police and the Meitei community say they were weaponized. You have said, please correct me if I'm wrong, you have said that to your information, no ordnance was dropped from the drones. In other words, the drones were not weaponized. Could you please talk about the drones and your understanding of how these drones are being used?
Um, Actually, whenever a question is asked, I always want to give a background to
Okay.
contextualize. When this
Okay.
first happened, when I first got this information on the first, I think that is the day when this information was going around. I got a call from one of the media houses to say a drone has dropped some ammunition in Manipur, and hell has broken loose. What do you have to say
Mhm.
about it? Uh, I told the person concerned who called me, I said, look, I don't know of this. I've just read it. I don't know the details, but I'm telling you, I'm not surprised if something like this has happened, because it was something waiting to happen, given what's happening across. And I've said this in my earlier interviews, beginning 2020, when Myanmar army first used uh,
Hmm.
drones to draw ammunition against the Arakan army. Thereafter, it went in an escalatory manner. The PDF started training, and October, November 2022 onwards, they also started. Now PDF is fighting very close to Manipur border, very close to Mizoram and Nagaland border. So it was a matter of time before it came here. So my first reaction was, obviously I'm not surprised if it has happened,
Surprised.
but I was actually keeping quiet. But then the blame again went back to Assam Rifles. People started questioning what was Assam Rifle doing when these drones were flying. What was Assam Rifle doing when, of course, it should not have worried me. I'm no longer the DG, but having spent so many years in Assam Rifle, I hold the force very close to my heart. So I wanted to do a little more research on this, and then uh, what has actually happened. Now, let me tell you. Uh, there were these drones that were flown. Yes, drones are being flown for quite some time by both the factions, essentially to videograph, photograph, and kind of see the deployments, if I can call the deployments,
Mm-hmm.
um, by both of them. And there are, of course, some of the agricultural drones; those also on use, like in rest of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But while the drones flew, yes, surely they flew, but there was no ammunition that was dropped, is the information that I got. It so happened the drones flew went at the same time there were those pompies that got fired. And you've seen pompies yourself. It was the pompies which fell. So people put two and two that these ammunition have been dropped from the drone, which was not the case. Yes, both
Mm-hmm.
things happened simultaneously. There was no correlation. The drone would have been flown to find out the deployment, or not deployment, actually just see how the village is. Maybe they were targeting someone and it went somewhere else. But again, please see that postmortem report of that lady who died. She died of a bullet wound, as reports from Manipur themselves suggest. I'm not saying this. So that is the context I wanted to bring forth.
So you're saying that the Pompey is, of course, the kind of home assembled, slight cannon-looking things. I saw them in the trenches, and I'm showing those images where I first saw them on the ground in Manipur. You're saying that the firing from these sort of homemade type cannons, for lack of a better word to explain it to a general audience, this coincided with the drones, so people thought that the munition had fallen from the drones, but it had actually come from these homemade cannons. Is
That is
that
my
what you're
understanding.
arguing?
That is my understanding. You have to contextualize the kind of effect that was being shown on the ground, and the drone
Right.
that was being, from that kind of a drone, you can't carry anything more than 1.5 to 2 kgs of warhead. Whereas when you see the destruction that was being shown, it was from a
Yeah.
bigger warhead. It had to be a Pompey, or it could have been any
Yeah.
other new weapon, rockets as they are being now called in Manipur.
Right. So it is your understanding that drones are still being used for surveillance and not for dropping of bombs.
That is my understanding. That is what I'm just trying to relate, the kind of damage that was being shown and the drones that were being shown. My understanding is from those drones, those heavy warheads cannot be dropped.
Right.
It couldn't have been dropped.
Now let's look at, there's been a strong reaction even to that. We've had, and this is again across party lines, the members of the Meitei community, where the exercise that you're saying this, they say that the police has said that the drones are weaponized. What do you make of what the Manipur police has said on this?
I really won't be able to comment. For that matter, they are on ground. They are in a better position to say that. But I'm just using my military knowledge and from the video footage that was shown, and after having spoken to the troops on ground, besides some of the other people whom I know there. Why the police is saying, I don't know. Perhaps they have reasons of their own to suggest, but I am still convinced that yes, there were rockets or whatever pompies that were fired. So these two have got connected, which should not have been done.
Now the situation is still very grave because the fact is that you have thousands of weapons in civilian hands, and that has been the case now for over a year. Today somebody was telling me that it's an estimated 10 to 15,000 weapons in civilian hands. And a lot of them are now being configured to be, as you said, pompies assembled at home, right, fired almost like trench warfare. So you have these boys, they're shorter than their guns. I have met them. They're school going boys. They say they want to join the Indian army, but they're sitting there in the trenches firing on the other side. You have farmers, at night walking with guns. why has it been so difficult, according to you, to disarm, to disarm these civilians of their weapons? That, to me, there can be no peace, no dialogue, nothing till we take weapons back from civilians in both communities.
Again, not a very correct assessment, I must say. There have been weapons
In
that
what
have been
way?
confiscated from both the groups. And before
Yes.
some of our viewers again call, start branding Assam Rifle as pro a certain faction, from the
Yeah.
cookies themselves, close to 200 weapons, sorry, 1,000 plus weapons have been confiscated. Uh, in terms of the cadres or volunteers or insurgents, call them whatever you want, or fighters, uh, close to 170 or 200 of them have been handed over to the police. Bunkers, the ones I'm seeing in your visuals, those have been destroyed. More than about 300 of them have been destroyed of cookies. Uh, Mathis, not very many because they're all in the denotified areas. But yes, even the same thing has been done against Mathis.
Hmm. No, sir, it is not my suggestion that the Assam Rifles hasn't been doing its job. I'm simply saying, isn't it dangerous that so many civilians have weapons? That's all I'm asking.
Of course, it's a dangerous situation. That is the first. The society has to be de-weaponized. The number of weapons that are there is a serious cause of concern.
Can I ask you to talk about the role, the border, the porous border, the fact that there is a Myanmar border? There's a huge debate that goes on the national security implications of what is unfolding. What is there? Are there? There's a lot of talk of drug cartels and so on. What is your own assessment about the national security dimension to what's happening in Manipur?
Uh, Manipur is actually the crucible of our Act East or Look East policy, whatever you may call that.
Yeah.
It's the hub, the place from where your Act East policy will actually, at least the land part of it, the movement will happen from there. And why? It's because of reasons of terrain. In the other states, whether it is South Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, or Nagaland, terrain will not allow you to move goods, move people, and the development across is also not all that great. So, if your Act East policy has to fructify, it has to be through Manipur. So, surely it's a cause of grave concern for us that a state like Manipur is affected by this kind of violence and turmoil.
Has it been hurtful to you, as the man who was leading the Assam Rifles till just July end, to be constantly under the kind of attack that you have been from sections of people, not all people, from sections of people? As you said, nobody thanks us for saving lives. You believe the media is either biased or not very fair. How hurtful, how tough has this last year been for you?
In the beginning, it was a little tough when it started coming. Then we would tell our command elements. I'd speak to the IGs, the sector commanders, the COs whenever I met them, visited them. So long as your conscience is clear, there is nothing really to worry. And given the fact that we've been there for 190 years, we are completing 190 years next year. Uh, we've been doing exactly what we've been doing earlier, whatever our role has been. So let's not get too upset by what people are saying. Let's just continue to do our job, and that's what we did. And because there's no end to this, and this is
Yeah.
another thing I keep telling everyone, that we have soldiers from both the communities. We've not had any case of polarization in their minds. They are working in harmony. They're working against their own groups. Why? That's because of the
Yeah.
motivation that the Indian Army officers who are leading them can give them.
Absolutely. And on that note, I want to say that among the victims, whether it was last year, when a viral video of a woman being paraded naked after being assaulted, or this past week, among the victims have been soldiers and their families. And just this week, we have got news that a former Havaldar of the Assam Regiment was among those killed, and all that he did, was to cross what is called the buffer zone. And when you look at these kind of reports where you see, here he is, Havaldar Mate in his uniform. I was speaking to his wife, and his wife said to me, my husband served the country as a patriot. She was talking about her son, even after her husband has been killed, possibly joining the army. As an army man, as a general, when you look at this, what goes through your heart and mind when you see that a brave Havildar who has seen war, who has seen conflict, today he goes to run an errand, and he doesn't come back home.
Manipur is very close to my heart. No matter what trolls I get, what gets commented below, it really doesn't affect me. I
It's okay,
hold
sir. We all get trolled. We all get trolled. Let's ignore
it
the
doesn't
trolls.
it,
Yeah,
it doesn't really affect. uh,
yeah,
the love for Manipur that I have will continue. For the people of Manipur, cutting across ethnicities, I have great friends for the past 30 years from all these three communities. I value their
yeah.
friendship immensely. Some of them may not speak openly because of the various pressures that are there, but the point is, Manipur is the state which contributes maximum soldiers to Indian Army and Assam Rifles after Assam. Assam obviously has about 64.5% of the population of the entire Northeast. And Manipur, with a minuscule population of, it must be 32, 33 lakhs now, contributes the second largest. Whereas there are states like Tripura, which have three times or four times the population of
Hmm.
Manipur. So it is quite disconcerting for soldiers and former soldiers of the state, no matter which community they belong to, if incidents like this happen.
Can I ask you in the end to talk about what you think should happen now? If you had to give a prescriptive solution, because you've seen it all. You've seen it all. What could bring Manipur back from the brink?
See, at the macro level, there are multiple things that can be done, should be done, which the government will be aware of. I mean, I'm just a small person. I can't be telling the government what to do. All I can say is for the people of Manipur to just take a step behind, understand that this is not taking them anywhere. It is the elders. The elders, like the women in Manipur, have a great sway over the people. And next is the youth. And incidentally, as we are speaking, we know of this youth unrest, that's happening in
Students, March.
students.
Yeah.
Yes, it is these two categories of the population who can bring peace. Unless they realize that this cannot carry on endlessly, they have to take a step back and put an end to the violence. And of course, along with that, get the weapons back. You asked me this question as to why are you not able to get weapons. It is not that we are not getting weapons. We are getting weapons from both the communities, but it is like searching a needle in a haystack. It's a tough task. There are also denotified areas where we cannot go to. You're aware of that.
Hmm.
Similarly, in the hills, where all do you search for weapons? Uh,
Yeah.
there and as I noticed from your video, you've gone to most of these places in the hills, and you've seen how the bunkers are made in very remote places. So
Yeah.
it's a tough ask, but they have been doing whatever best they can do. Again, you'll ask me 60,000 troops and not doing enough. This is a question which everyone asks.
I am not actually asking that. I have a different perspective on this. I personally believe that Manipur can only be healed by both communities coming to the dialogue table, and that can only
Yes,
be politically facilitated. In no conflict can, the army does what it can, the security forces do what they can, but in the end the solution is in talking. There's no other solution.
exactly. Exactly. That's what I meant by they need to take a step back, sit across the table and talk. That's the only way forward. Otherwise, this cycle of violence will never end. It will only keep escalating. There might be some lulls, like you said, but then some trigger, some miscreant from either of the groups doing something wrong, and it will again go back to square one. So
But
that's not what we need at this time.
Well, General Nair, I want to say to you that I fully appreciate what a tough job you've had in the last year. I fully appreciate your sense of being underappreciated, and more than you, what the young soldiers who serve with you on the ground must have gone through. I am deeply sort of respectful of that, and I apologize if any of my questions conveyed otherwise. All I'm trying to do is to ask you what I'm asked. ये क्यों नहीं होता, वो क्यों नहीं होता, but personally this has to have a political response. No army man can solve this. So Thank you for your service, General Nair, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.